Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the lectures of this self-knowledge course. In today's lecture, we will begin a study that will continue through this conference and the next one, in which we will examine in detail what is commonly called hell, or the inferior dimensions of planet Earth. These inferior dimensions are divided into 9 regions known as Dante's circles. Today we will study the first 5 circles in detail, and in the next lecture we will examine the remaining 4. Unlike Lecture 9 of Phase A, where we studied the 9 Dante's circles within our own inner world, in this lecture we are referring to the infradimensions of planet Earth itself. Therefore, we will discuss the process that the spark undergoes each time it exhausts the 108 opportunities it receives with a human physical body during a cycle, without choosing in any of those existences to awaken consciousness. This involutionary process, or descent through the infradimensions of the planet, is a completely necessary stage within the wheel of existence, and it is ultimately a liberating process. When a spark has darkened its seminal envelope through the continual creation of countless psychological defects, and does not voluntarily undertake the work necessary to free itself from them, the ego gradually drags it toward the lowest levels of degeneration, causing it to lose even the slightest spiritual aspiration and plunging it completely into materialism and perversity. For this reason, a limit is established. Through a mechanical law, nature itself takes responsibility for liberating these essences during the difficult passage through the 9 circles into which the infradimensions are divided. Within each circle, specific types of psychological eyes are gradually purged, while at the same time the being pays, through suffering, the karma generated by those defects. At the conclusion of this process, the spark emerges completely purified, possessing 3% awakened consciousness and 97% innocent and capturable essence, ready to begin a new turn of the wheel of samsara and a new opportunity to create a soul. During this involutionary journey, the spark passes physically through different bodies belonging to involutionary animals, then involutionary plants, and finally involutionary minerals. Meanwhile, the contaminated essence, or psyche, passes through each of the 9 regions known as Dante's circles. These circles are known to us thanks to the work of Dante Alighieri, who, in his Divine Comedy, described the experiences he lived astrally while guided by his guru, Virgil. Through this guidance, he was shown the process that different souls undergo during involution within the interior of the planet. Each of us should verify these realities for ourselves through conscious astral projection. We will now study these circles one by one so that we may better understand this process. Hopefully, this study will inspire us to reflect deeply on the importance of voluntarily eliminating our psychological defects, paying our karmic debts, and achieving the self-realization of our being now that we possess the necessary tools, rather than having to pass once again through this entire involutionary process. The first Dante's circle is the submerged sphere of the moon. This circle is governed by 96 laws. This region is known as limbo, the vestibule of hell. It belongs to the 2nd dimension of nature and is formed by all the caves and subterranean cavities of the planet united astrally. Within this circle are all the disembodied beings who have not yet exhausted their 108 existences. Here they review the life that has just ended, like while awaiting their next return to the physical world. All the inhabitants of this region continue carrying out the same activities they performed during physical life. Everyone moves about with consciousness asleep. We also find here all incarnated human beings who do not possess solar bodies. When we fall asleep physically, we enter limbo, or the lunar astral region, because this circle contains all those who have not yet received the baptism. These are sincere but mistaken individuals who believed that liberation could be achieved without the practice of sexual magic. This is the circle of the lazy. Here are found all those human beings who failed to transmute the seminal waters. The second Dante's circle is the submerged sphere of Mercury. This circle is governed by 192 laws. There one experiences the hurricane-like winds of Mercury, a fatal manifestation of the air element. The negative, passionate forces that give rise to the astral tides remain in a state of perpetual agitation and turbulence. It is a region where human understanding no longer functions because all its inhabitants are driven by instinctive fornicatory impulses. This is a world dominated by brutal instincts, where lust is combined with the force of violence. Here we find all those who practiced fornication and delighted in expelling the sacred sperm from their organism. They engage incessantly in their passions and feel profound hostility toward everything related to chastity. Millions of human creatures dwell in this region with the abominable Kundabuffer organ fully developed. Those who enter this circle have virtually no possibility of return. Nevertheless, on rare occasions, the masters who work in these regions may assist those who sincerely and genuinely repent. When someone manages to recognize their errors and awakens within themselves a true longing for the being, they may receive help. Through mercy, the masters can grant them a new opportunity with a human physical body so that they may attempt their self-realization once again. However, such cases are extremely uncommon because those who descend into this circle usually do so filled with self-consideration or blasphemy against the divine, rather than engaging in self-examination and sincere self-judgment. Furthermore, once there, they become increasingly immersed in their instinctive fornication. Fornication and lust constitute the very foundation upon which the ego is built. The third Dante's circle is the submerged sphere of Venus. This circle is governed by 384 laws. There, incessant rain falls continuously amid intense cold, mud, sewage, decay, and corruption. Pleasure is the ruling force in this region. Here we find taverns, cabarets, brothels, orgies, and bacchanalian celebrations. All of this exists within the submerged sphere of Venus. Those who spent their lives moving from one orgy to another, from one bar to the next, immersed in the excesses of feasts, banquets, and drunkenness, know well the emptiness and suffering that follow a night devoted to pleasure. Many attempt to drown their inner misery in wine, only to continue descending further along the path of vice until they reach the complete ruin of their organism. For after every pleasure, pain inevitably follows. In this region, the deceased hear with horror the terrifying barking of Cerberus, the infernal dog. This symbolic creature, with its 3 cruel jaws, represents violent and uncontrolled animal passions, luciferic forces that have escaped all restraint. Here, the pleasures once celebrated in the Rome of the Caesars reveal their fatal consequences. The banquets, the adulterers, the lesbians, the poets of degeneration, the proud lords of extravagant feasts, the gluttons, drunkards, drug addicts, and all those devoted to sensual pleasures are found in this domain. Flattery, praise, applause, sweet words, luxurious garments, vows of love, seductions, caresses, kisses, perfumes, magnificent dances, comforts, fascination with worldly attractions, and sumptuous meals were once experienced as delights. Now, however, only the pestilence of the subterranean world of Venus remains. After all pleasures have passed, nothing is left but tears, symbolized by the relentless rain of that dreadful region, by its bitter and pestilential waters, and by the horrifying mud of misery. The fourth Dante's circle is the submerged sphere of the sun. This circle is governed by 768 laws. Within the solar hells of planet Earth, we find those who lived in imbalance, represented by 2 clearly defined types, the wasteful and the greedy. Wastefulness is as harmful as greed. In this region, one learns the necessity of remaining faithful to balance, for every violation of equilibrium brings painful karmic consequences. The prodigal person, the one who squanders money, may believe deep within that such behavior is generosity. Nevertheless, it is evident that this attitude violates the law. Likewise, the miser who refuses to circulate wealth and selfishly accumulates money beyond reasonable necessity harms the community. By withholding what should flow naturally, such a person deprives others of opportunities and contributes to the impoverishment of fellow human beings. For this reason, greed also constitutes a violation of the law of balance. Although the wasteful individual may appear to contribute positively by circulating money excessively, such behavior inevitably creates imbalance, both within themselves and within the broader movement of economic values. Over time, these distortions produce serious consequences for society as a whole. Both prodigality and miserliness ultimately lead to poverty, and experience repeatedly demonstrates this truth. It is essential to cooperate with the law of the eternal trogo auto-egocratic cosmic common exchange rather than obstructing economic balance. We must neither harm ourselves nor harm others. In these infernal regions, the prodigal and the miser, consumed by desperation, blaspheme against the divine, curse, quarrel, and sink into profound despair. Here we also find exploiters of bodies and souls, gamblers devoted to lotteries, dice, and cards, as well as priests, hierarchs, and mystics who are insatiably attached to the possessions of others. The fifth Dante's circle is the submerged sphere of Mars. This circle is governed by 1,536 laws. It is evident that this fifth submerged region is denser and more material than the preceding ones. Consequently, the suffering experienced there is even greater. Within this circle stand out the sarcastic, the furious, the arrogant, and the proud. Here are found murderers, violent individuals, destroyers, blasphemers who curse constantly, people consumed by hatred and revenge, those filled with self-consideration, individuals who continually harm one another, and the wicked who live by threatening others. What is remarkable is that all these people believe they are acting correctly. Not one of them suspects, even for a moment, that they are walking the paths of darkness and horror. On the contrary, each one considers themselves righteous, virtuous, and justified. Some desperate eyes flee from other attacking eyes, even though all of them belong to the same ego. Each faction runs in terror, seeking refuge from the others without comfort or relief. The deceased attempt to hide from themselves, experiencing horror before their own psychological creations. In the fifth circle, the consciousness comes face to face with its own wickedness, its own horrors, its own violence, and its disastrous anger. Consciousness seeks to escape from itself, from the terrifying and violent monsters that it has carried within. In this fifth natural infradimension of planet Earth, consciousness is forced to confront itself directly. It comes to know itself by observing itself from countless perspectives, through the eyes of each of its own eyes. To wallow in such misery, fleeing from oneself while feeling terror before oneself, witnessing the eye, confronting the eye, parts of oneself struggling against other parts of oneself, is truly the horror of horrors. It is something indescribable, a terror beyond the reach of words. The invitation is for us to understand deeply that each of these devilish eyes carries within it a specific percentage of our own consciousness. Therefore, we must find the courage to undertake conscious and voluntary inner work aimed at eliminating these defects from our psyche. Only in this way can we liberate the consciousness trapped within them and free ourselves from their painful consequences. In the next lecture, we will continue our study of Dante's circles by examining the remaining 4 circles where psychological defects of a more intellectual nature are gradually purged. Remember that you may leave us any questions that arise regarding these topics. Until next time.